Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying Elasticon. Thank you for joining today's session on content management in Kibana. My name is Alex Francoeur. I'm one of the product managers responsible for Kibana, and I'm very excited to be giving this talk today. So before jumping in, I plan to touch upon some forward-looking items towards the end of this talk. And so as a result, I get to show this wonderful safe harbor slide. Any of the roadmap discussion today should not influence any purchase or investment decisions. And now that we have that out of the way, let's dive into the content. So today we're breaking down the talk into a few different sections. First, the problem space. Why is this important? Second, all the tools you have available to you today. Third, a quick demo of this and what it looks like all tied together. And last but not least, a quick glimpse into where we want to go. And so I wanted to kick off this talk by highlighting a problem in my personal life. Some of you might relate to it, some of you might not. Those that do will certainly empathize with me. I have a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. They're the most amazing people in the world, but no matter what I do, my house cannot stay clean for more than a few hours. And so if you're familiar with Spark Joy by Marie Kondo, this certainly does not bring me joy. Now this brings me joy. I think Marie Kondo would be impressed as well. Did I incentivize my kids with Elasticon swag to clean this room to perfection? Maybe. Did they leave a training potty in the picture on the right still? Yes, they did. Would my wife kill me if she knew I was broadcasting our mess? Definitely, she definitely would. Whether you can relate to the situation or not, I think we can all agree that organization makes everything a bit easier for everyone. Things are more discoverable when they're consolidated and categorized in a meaningful way. And so why do I share my messy basement with you? Because I have a feeling that Marie Kondo would not be happy with the number of your Kibana instances. And so I'm going to take a step back and talk about a typical evolution of members in our community. Given the history of the Elastic Stack, it's not uncommon for someone to start with log analytics. They'll get some great insights, leverage our curated solutions, and create a dashboard or two to gain some quick insights. Some will have a success story, and word will get out. And because of this, people begin to speculate how they might also be able to leverage Elastic. And so as a result, new use cases will pop up. Wait, you did what? Can I do that with my data? Teams begin to throw data at your cluster and build content in Kibana to make sense of it. More users log in, do the same, and repeat. And soon your Elasticsearch cluster and Kibana instances aren't just used for observability, but also security, search experiences, and general purpose analytics. And so very quickly, your Kibana assets grow from 10 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000 or more. And this is a very common pattern we see with our end users. When the amount of content hits a certain threshold, you need a good way to manage it. And at Elastic, there are multiple tiers in which you can organize, govern, and manage your content. The first tier is environmental. This tier is focused on managing your content within your environment and may include multiple Kibana instances and Elasticsearch clusters. The Kibana tier is focused on managing content within a single instance of Kibana, used across multiple teams or for multiple use cases. And this segmentation is primarily accomplished through spaces. Spaces enable you to organize your saved objects, such as dashboards, into meaningful high-level categories. And so the last tier is a space. Once in a space, there are many ways to manage your Kibana assets. This tier is focused on saved objects. And for those unfamiliar with saved objects, they're the primary entity in Kibana. Saved objects are typically dashboards, visualizations, saved searches, but can also be things like rule configurations or saved configurations and applications. And so the tools I plan to discuss today allow you to organize your content at these levels and are already available for use today. And so with that, let's dive in. One of the most critical steps for content management is establishing trust early on. You only get one first impression. And so the best way to establish trust is to provide as much context as possible upfront. At the environment level and Kibana level, this can be done in numerous ways. The first is top-level banners. You can configure custom banners to be used globally across Kibana or customized per space. In Kibana banners can be used visually to visually differentiate environments, teams, or organizations. They can also be used for accreditation purposes and adding additional context to the workspace, such as links to resources, wikis, and more. And so in addition to banners, you can also customize the login experience. This will make sure your users know where they are and why upon login. Through Kibana YAML config, you can customize multiple messages with full support for Markdown. These can include general login help information, notification for maintenance or administrative messages, or an access agreement before entering the environment. And similar to establishing trust, you can designate a purpose wherever possible. Within Kibana, you can segment your assets by space. Once inside a space, you only see the saved objects that belong to that space. The purpose of each space is to be easily identifiable to obvious to net new users. You can leverage things like images, emojis, and most importantly, metadata. And spaces have the ability to customize what's inside them through feature and sub-feature controls. And so with this type of granularity, you can begin to define what applications are shown within a space. For example, if you had a SOC space for your security operations center, you can choose only to show security applications and dashboards. And so this is another great way to designate purpose by use case, team, or even customers. Now, historically, every visualization created in a dashboard would be created as a separate asset or saved object. In most recent releases, there have been some wonderful improvements to dashboard creation. And by default, any visualization created within a dashboard is actually only persisted within that dashboard. And so as a result, we introduced this concept of a visualization library. And these visualizations can be referenced and reused across multiple dashboards and are how visualizations worked in earlier versions of Kibana. In existing dashboards, you can choose to unlink that reference from the library and persist any changes within the dashboard itself. And so most dashboards will be self-contained, where optionally, visualizations can be referenced across multiple dashboards. And so the end result ends up being a much cleaner Kibana instance and ultimately significantly fewer assets to deal with. Context is key and a critical element for building trust in your data. And so if users don't understand what they're looking at, they won't trust the data, or at the very least, it'll create unnecessary cycles to try to understand it. And with great power comes great responsibility. My kids are really into Spidey these days, so I have to use that. If you're presenting data in a meaningful way to end users, you're responsible for setting them up for success. And so content providers can be providing as much context as possible. It's almost the same as commenting code. What's easier, reading through a conditional statement or consuming a comment that summarizes the logic? And so providing context can be done in a variety of ways in Kibana. You can use Markdown in a dashboard panel, add a visualization description that can be consumed as a tooltip, and add descriptions to your dashboards. And within a space, we have the ability to organize your content using tags. Multiple tags can be applied to a single dashboard, a visualization, or a saved search. Within a tag, you can add a name, a color, and a description. And for folks who already have thousands of Kibana assets they'd like to organize, we do offer bulk management capabilities through tag management. Here you can easily add and remove tags from saved objects and edit the tags themselves. Tags also make discovery that much easier for new content. Through navigational search, you can search for a specific tag or use them as a filter in list views. Visually, it makes content navigation that much easier to parse. And so all the tools I mentioned thus far have been related to content governance within Kibana. And while that's useful, if we think of the environmental tier, it's quite possible that Kibana is only part of the larger picture. We see a number of large customers establishing version control best practices that live outside of Kibana, exporting saved objects from one Kibana instance, merging into a GitHub repository, and promoting to production, all along the way keeping an audit of changes made. And so all saved objects in Kibana are new line delimited JSON files. By using software development tools like GitHub, you can have a much tighter control over what lives in your Kibana instance. And down the road, we may be able to introduce this level of version control in Kibana itself, but we're not quite there yet. This process doesn't need to be manual either. We have APIs available to automate CRUD capabilities for saved objects, dashboards, visualizations, index patterns. In addition to saved object APIs, we also have APIs for creating spaces and much more. It's worth noting that these APIs are listed as experimental, but we use them in our products today and have numerous customers leveraging them in production environments. In the future, we'd like to move them out of experimental into something that's more supported, but again, we're also not quite there yet. Sometimes boundaries are necessary. You may need to lock down not just your data, but your Kibana assets as well. It's important to make sure folks are only accessing what is appropriate for their role. And Kibana offers a number of tools, not just to establish these boundaries, but ensure they are working. A few slides back, I mentioned feature controls and sub-feature controls in spaces. And while this can be done without security enabled, we also leverage role-based access control, or RBAC. So with Kibana privileges, you can choose not only what users have access to, but also what their privileges are for those applications. And so this allows you to create roles that have only read-only access to dashboards in one space, but write access to dashboards and applications in another. In addition to creating these boundaries, you can monitor them to make sure they're working properly. Kibana recently introduced more detailed audit logs for Kibana assets. With this functionality, you can see exactly who accessed what, and if they accessed it successfully or not, and who continually failed to log into the cluster, for instance. And so auto logging is a great security feature, but it can also have other uses. So auto logs don't have to be just for security. They can be used to measure adoption and usage of saved objects. And so we know who's accessing what, we can extract a number of things. Some examples include understanding the most popular and least popular dashboards, which users are most active, and what saved objects are most critical for that Kibana instance. And so this functionality is one of our longstanding requests from the community. And while we don't view auto logins as a solution to the problem, it's a good workaround to understand the adoption of content within Kibana. We've had a number of large customers who are responsible for migrations and administrators to large implementations already begin to take advantage of this functionality in this way in production environments. And so with that, I'm going to hop into a quick demo. So the first thing I want to call out is that I have one of the login configurations set up here. And it's, as you can see, it says it's Elasticon demo environment. And what I'm trying to showcase here is that I'm providing context before login. So folks who are coming in for the first time know what they're looking for. And this is all fully customizable with Markdown. You can see I have a header here, some text, and an image. And so I'll just log in really quick. And so here are my spaces. I have workspaces here set up for particular teams, use cases, and even customers. And so you can leverage these in a number of different ways. I'm going to jump into my laptop monitoring space. And so the first thing I want to highlight is setting up a banner. So I'm going to jump into advanced settings within Kibana. And enable a banner that I already pre-configured. So this is available with a couple of options. You can choose where to place it. You have some context here with full support for Markdown, and then colors for text in the background. So I'll go ahead and save it and refresh Kibana. And you can see here, this is a very nice and easy visual way to differentiate environments. And so I'll go ahead and jump into spaces while I'm in management, just to highlight some of the capabilities that are available here. And so if I wanted to create a space that maybe limited what was available, I could, for instance, maybe just remove these different use cases, and I want to showcase a space that has general purpose analytics and maybe some management capabilities. And so this is the space that I'm in right now. And you'll notice that I now have only access to analytics and management capabilities. And so that's just one of the ways to kind of curate the experience within one of your workspaces. And so what I want to do is go ahead and jump into an existing dashboard that I have running right now. This is leveraging Elastic Agent and Fleet and monitoring basically my laptop. And you can see here that Zoom is the primary consumer of CPU right now. And so really quickly, I want to go ahead and create a visualization. And so I'll edit, create. And I'm going to leverage one of my new favorite features in Kibana. These are lens formulas. So let's go ahead and just create a quick time series chart. And so here I'm going to add a quick formula. Let me expand this so I got a little more room to work with. And I'm going to copy and paste just to save some time. But you can see here I'm using SQL to create a sum of processes that are marked with Chrome over the sum of the total CPU value. And so I'll go ahead and collapse that and then save this after converting to %. I'm going to save this and return to the dashboard. And so now I have this within my dashboard, and it's all by itself, basically. So this is a new panel within a dashboard. It is not persisted as its own saved object. So it only exists within the dashboard and makes for a much cleaner experience for building these types of things. And so if I wanted to, I could go ahead and go into Lens and basically save it to the library. And so I'll call this Chrome percentage CPU. And then maybe add a description with the exact formula here. And we'll go ahead and add an Elasticon tag, formulas, and then I'm gonna also create a new one for live demo. Clearly I've done this before. And a tag solely for demo purposes. And so save and return to the dashboard, and this will now add it to the library. And so now here, you can also see that I have a new tooltip that provides kind of some metadata and context as you're in the dashboard to explain exactly what's going on there. And so if I wanted to, and I changed my mind, maybe I didn't want to persist it within the library or make some changes only to the dashboard, I can go ahead and also actually unlink it from the library. So now it lives within the dashboard itself. And so with that, I'm going to jump into, let me see, go ahead and save this first. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into tag management. And so here's the kind of the tag management area. This is where we can make bulk modifications, for instance. And so maybe I want to take this elasticon tag and add it to, let's say, all visualizations. And so I just go ahead and select, save tag assignments, and now it's added for all visualizations. And so tags also are very useful for kind of navigation. And so maybe I wanted to type in type dashboard just to highlight and filter on dashboards, and then tag elasticon. And so here we go. And I go into the system dashboard and kind of jump right back where I started. And so I wanted to highlight that because it's a nice, easy way to navigate content now that it's organized appropriately. And so I did mention audit logging earlier. And while I don't have a large production cluster, this is a single instance of Kibana on my laptop. I do want to highlight that I've been logging essentially every interaction with a saved object that I've had this whole time. And so you can see here that I have the top dashboards that are being viewed within the last 24 hours. I can capture and kind of understand views over time. I can even view like the visualizations, how many of those are being leveraged, what index patterns are being referenced the most, and then who are the most active users, for instance. And so you can see here that I am, you can see me, this user right here, doing a number of different things within Kibana. So I access the dashboard, and this is kind of what the data looks like, just at a very quick high level. And so that is one way to leverage audit logs to kind of understand which visualizations and dashboards are being used, and as you're migrating content, maybe you're upgrading to a new version, understand where you can cut the fat, basically. And so it's a very useful feature for larger organizations. And so you can build certain workflows into it as well. Let's say if I wanted to jump into the most popular dashboard, we can build a drill down that does that direct navigation. And so with that, I'm actually going to jump back into my slides. And I wanted to highlight a couple of roadmap items. So these are the roadmap items that are either already under development or in the product definition phase. And so we don't necessarily have a finalized target timeframe or committed to delivering these quite yet, but I think it's worth highlighting where we are going and where we want to go. So one of the first things to highlight is shareable saved objects. In the future, all saved objects will be shareable essentially across one space or multiple spaces or all spaces. And so with shareable saved objects, you can define in which spaces Kibana assets live and what their permissions will be. So this will open new use cases for dashboard promotion, in addition to removing things like rule duplication for resource consumption and alerting. The next one is user assets. And so on the opposite end of the spectrum, kind of bringing it in, we're also turning our focus towards users and personalized experiences. And so if I were to go and give this talk down the road, a fourth tier I would probably add at the beginning would be for the user. You can imagine all of the content management capabilities described throughout this talk as a single user experience. And so this would open up the door to user-specific assets, the appropriate RBAC on them, and allow for personalized dashboard and space promotion flows. And so the last one here is content management and governance. We're just getting started in this space, really starting to think through it, but there's a lot what we can do to help our operators with large amounts of users generating content. Providing metadata and usage monitoring is just one of the many ways we want to begin tackling the space. So definitely stay tuned for more there, and feel free to add some comments and discuss in GitHub. And so bringing it back to where we started, isn't this much more refreshing? Doesn't that organization feel better? With the tools we discussed today and what lies ahead, your Kibana instances can begin to look like this too. And so while this might seem overwhelming for some of you, especially if you're responsible for a large Kibana instance, that's okay. Luckily, there are steps you can take to get started. And so the first thing you want to do is take inventory. How much content is there today? What is it? There's an opportunity to leverage Kibana auto logging here to determine the adoption of your assets. Knowing what's being used and what isn't important to focus your efforts and prioritize. There's a good chance you don't need to fix everything, just the important things. And so as part of your inventory and focus, it'll be good to create meaningful buckets, whether this is by team, organization, customer, feature, environment. There are many ways to make this meaningful. And so segmentation creates ownership and improves discoverability. Defining this up front before making changes is really critical. And last but not least, leverage the capabilities I shared in demo today to manage your content natively in Kibana. By taking advantage of native capabilities like tags, banners, and spaces, you automatically get any improvements or enhancements to these features down the road. And so with that, I wanted to thank you so much for your time today. I encourage you to ask questions and open up enhancement requests in our GitHub repos. And I hope you found this talk useful. Enjoy the rest of Elasticon. Thank you so much.